Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our developer Dynasty here on the Wolverine Studios Twitch channel. We are taking a look at Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball 2021 tonight. And as we mentioned on our social media outlets today, we're shortening our stream times to 30 minutes for these developer dynasties. And we're really going to start focusing on specific parts of things that we're working on. The first one we did for both basketball and football, we kind of did, a big kind of look at everything and talk about everything and get suggestions for everything. And we're tightening up now going forward so that we have more focused streams for these developer dynasties. And that way, if there's a particular topic that you're going to be interested in, you'll really want to tune into that stream and discuss it. So tonight we are going to talk about the upgrades that we've made in the trading module for the 2021 game. Last week we had quite a number of suggestions for this portion of the game, and we've implemented most of those and also come up with a bunch of new suggestions. So anytime that we are going through here, feel free to drop something in the chat box. We want to talk about your suggestions, things you like, things you don't like, and that's how we make the game better. So that's what we're going to do here. And I'm just going to throw a quick message in the box. So that everybody knows, if it's not a topic we're covering tonight, we'll make a note of it and take a look at it next week and see what we can do about development areas on that as we go along. But we are going to talk trade tonight. I also want to thank our subscribers to the channel. We had a few subscribers in the last week. We really appreciate that level of support from our community. If you have Amazon Prime, I believe you can get a free Twitch Prime account, and that gives you a free subscription every month that you can subscribe to a channel. So if you have that available and you like the content that we're doing, especially with these developer dynasties, and you want to support us, we'd absolutely appreciate you throwing that free subscription our way. If you have the ability to subscribe to the channel otherwise, certainly appreciate that as well. And don't forget to make sure that you're following us and have the notifications turned on so that you know when we go live. We've been live every Tuesday at 7:30 with the Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball, and last Friday we started the Developer Dynasty for Pro Football 2021. And we'll be back. We're looking at either Friday or Saturday for that stream. So, anyways, let's get down to business tonight. Thank you to the people in the room joining us so far. We're going to talk trade, and we had a lot of great suggestions last week and made a lot of improvements. So let's go and look at that trade screen. And if you see anything come up, you want to talk about it, throw it in the chat box, and we'll stop and chat about it. Okay, the very first thing I want to call your attention to is this top area here. We've made some interesting additions up here. We are now listing both what we feel the team needs are, the team weaknesses, and also you can see we call it right now team plan. So this will help you when you go to make trades. You can see what this team is lacking and what their status is right now. So in this case, Detroit is a playoff hopeful team. We can go and look at Miami, and it's calling Miami a rebuilding team, which it's looking at their roster here and says it needs everything but a shooting guard. So this will give you an idea of what this team is looking for. It's if you look at a team that's a contending team, they're not going to want to trade away, their star players or their core players in the rotation. So, even if it's a decent deal for them, like for a future draft pick or something like that, they're going to want to hang on to what they have because they're a contender. So they're really looking for players that can help them win this season. Whereas, rebuilder, they're going to be more likely to want to get rid of players and not so much picks. And then we have teams that we're going to call unsure. Teams that could go either way. They're not good enough to be contenders, but they have some young pieces maybe already that could be useful in building toward the future. So we use the roster mod that was available, so that when we talk trades, it's easier to talk if you have kind of real player names to look at, even though we have our fictitious teams. That way, it's a little bit easier to look at. And anybody can download the roster mods, of course, for any of our games, free on the forums. They're community-created roster mods. So in this case, Chicago would be unsure. They have young players like Mark Hennon, Levine, Wendell Carter Jr. in this roster set. Chris Dunn was still with the team in this roster set. This is a team that it doesn't need to tear everything down, but they're not good enough to be a contender. So we're calling them unsure, and they could go either way. If you trade them a really great, star player, they might give up some of their young players. If they had, a decent veteran like maybe Otto Porter Jr., they would be willing to trade him for picks or prospects or something like that to continue their rebuild. So I think that these, the weaknesses obviously will give you, if you have a specific player you're trading, like if we wanted to trade Gallinari here from Oklahoma City, we could find a team that needs a small forward. It's much easier to see what they need. Another suggestion from last week was adding the years on the contract to the main view here. And we've done that as well. So now you see their salary for this year, and you can see how many years they have left on their current contract. You can always click up here and click the salary and bio info and see the full breakdown of their contract. But this way, just from the main player stats view, you can get a quick look at how many years are left. So when you're trading for players or you're trading players, that if this guy's an expiring contract, it'll be easier to trade. In your case, the AI will recognize the value of an expiring contract as well. So those are three cosmetic items: the salary years remaining, the team needs, and what we're calling the team plan. That all came from suggestions in last week's stream. So that's why taking the time to do these live streams is really important to us, because that's we're getting feedback directly from the people playing the game, people who have a vested interest in the game, and this is your opportunity to make the game better. So if you have specific feedback about trading, which we're talking about tonight, go ahead and put it in the chat box. If you have ideas for something else, go ahead. We can talk about those, and we'll kind of work on them over the week and see what we come back with next week. Now that's the visual items that you can see that we've made a change in. The other one we've made is a bunch of changes under the hood to the trading engine, to the logic, which has really, really tightened things up for the AI. I mean, the trade engine was always pretty solid before. In fact, I felt it's far more realistic than any other basketball game, especially console-based ones. But we wanted to make it even better. So I've made a number of changes that I think will do that. First on the list was having teams reevaluate where they are more frequently, especially at the start of a season. Things can change drastically for a team from one year to the next. I think Toronto in this roster file is a pretty good example of that. It's a championship team, but if you remove Kawhi Leonard from that team, it's not a championship team anymore, most likely. So I think in the past the teams may have had difficulty kind of reevaluating where they were right at the start of the season, and coming in and thinking, oh, they're still a championship team, and our draft picks aren't going to be worth that much. Whereas they really need to reevaluate faster and kind of change how they're looking at their current team and the future of their team. So we've done a lot of work on that, as well as the evaluations of the first round picks. So I've seen a number of players, through the past year in Dynasty threads or stuff like that, who have sort of exploited things in terms of draft picks. They found ways that they could really stockpile a number of draft picks, and it's not a new problem to Pro Basketball 2020. It was doable in the past as well, and each time we've tried to cut it down a little bit. But this year, I've really spent a lot of time this week on the valuation of draft picks, so that we can't do this going forward. And also, not to turn it back where the draft picks become too valuable and you can start swapping them out for, players you shouldn't be able to. I mean, like a Giannis or Doncic or things like that. So there's been a lot of work on the first round picks. I don't want to talk about that. But we got a question in the chat box from Seasoned Vet. Thank you for popping in again. You've been at our Developer Dynasty streams now. I appreciate you giving us that time. Any preseason games or training camp injuries this year? Preseason games, probably not on the list. Training camp injuries, though, that's something that's been talked about before. I'm gonna make a note on that one, because I think really I don't know how useful the preseason games are, because in reality the players aren't playing full minutes. They're not playing very hard during those preseason games. It's mostly just to get warmed up. But the chance of injury happening, and we could kind of roll that into training camp, and that's something that that would be that's something that could be addressed. Maybe let me throw this out there. Do we want training camp injuries to be an option? So something that you could have or turn on or turn off, or is it just something that we should build in? I know most people will go for let's just make everything an option, but there comes a point where there's too many options and then people get overwhelmed. So there are some things I think we just build in, and that's how it's going to be, and some things that should be optional. So training camp injuries certainly could be something that we could make as an option, as there aren't too many. We're not to the point yet where there's too many options and it's too overwhelming. So we can still add things as options, but that would be a good idea. Anyways, moving back to the trading, what we're doing with the draft picks. I've taken a number of steps with the AI to make it smarter here. The first is that it's going to value its future draft picks differently than the current draft picks. So in the past, if you took a team that was, I will just grab Portland here. They're a playoff hopeful, it says. So in the past, it would really look at their picks, and it's kind of valuing all of them as where they stand today. But as in the case of, we just saw with Toronto, you take away the best player they have, and that team is not as good as it was. So it's really not proper for the AI to value a pick a season from now or 2 seasons from now as how the team is built today. So what we've done instead is I'm making the AI much more protective of its future picks, especially the first round ones. Second round picks are sort of worthless in both the game and real life. Every once in a while, if you do an early second round pick, you might hit on a gem or something like that, but it's pretty rare. We're making the AI value those future picks much more, so that if I go to make a trade, let me grab we'll grab Houston here. Let's say I want to trade Gallinari to Houston, and I want a first round pick for him. So I'll give me their 2023 first round pick, and obviously, we have to be cap legal in this deal, so I need a big salary. That's Eric Gordon, and I can throw House in here. And how much more salary do we need? We need a decent amount more. Who else can we throw in? Let's see, does Tucker make it work? Tucker makes it work. Okay, so in this instance, if I go to make this trade offer, Houston's going to tell me they're not going to trade a future first round pick without getting a valuable player. So even though the upgrade in their lineup, being able to put Gallinari in with Harden, Westbrook, and Capella, that'd be a nice a group of four there. And really giving up Gordon, House, and Tucker isn't giving up a ton. It's Gallinari is the most valuable in that group, and he's on a 1 year left on his contract, so he's an expiring contract. On top of all that, Houston's not willing to trade that future pick because now the AI is going to think, I don't know what's going to happen 2 seasons from now. They still have Westbrook and Harden under contract at that point, but those guys will be 2 years removed from where they are now. So even though they're a playoff hopeful team, even though they, are willing to make a move to make themselves better, they're not going to trade that future first round pick anymore in a situation like this, which that was one of the things that was being exploited in the prior versions of the game, that, humans could say, okay, look, this team's going to fall apart in 2 years, and that first round pick is going to be a lottery pick. Whereas now the AI is saying, okay, I'm going to think, the AI is going to consider that and think about that and say, okay, that could be a very valuable pick. We don't know what that pick is. If I throw in their first round pick from this year, now the AI can judge where the team is this year. It expects to be a playoff team, and they have a better understanding of what the valuation of this pick will be. So if I try to make this trade, it's giving obviously Houston the advantage because and it will accept that trade. So Houston will make that trade. So essentially the only thing that changed in that offer from one to the other was trading the year of the pick. But the AI can properly value, or at least better value, how things currently stand than how things might stand 2 seasons from now. And if you kind of look at it from a logistical perspective, that makes sense for Houston to make that deal because it gives them another high scoring player, because they're trying to make a run now. They're a team that's in trying to get into contention now, and they have star players now, and they know that they feel that first round pick in this season should not be a lottery pick. They should be a playoff team. They should be in contention. That should be a later first round pick, and they're willing to give up that, but they don't know what the future picks will be worth. So we spent a lot of time this week in trying to make the AI differentiate between what a current pick is worth and what a pick down the line will be worth. It's also going to do a better job of differentiating what your picks are worth, because it has to assume that you're going to make your team better, probably in most cases, with the trades, so that your future picks might not be worth as much. It has to take on that side of the coin too in its thought process here in evaluating the trades, so that it will not allow you to kind of trade off your future picks for under the guise of, I won't be that, the team isn't that great right now, but you're going to make that team better in the next year or two, and that pick's not going to end up being worth what it was if you have a decent team. So the AI is going to be smarter in that aspect as well. Couple other areas that I've noticed or talked about things with people that have gone on. The trading of multiple second round picks. In the past, there have been it is possible to package a bunch of picks and try to get a later pick. So that's something that is not particularly realistic, I think. There is the idea isn't to make this impossible to package multiple second round picks for, say, a first round pick, but it depends on where those picks realistically should be. Because there is a value of trading out of the first round at the very end of it to the beginning of the second round. Okay, there's two options for that in the game. One is that the first round pick is guaranteed money, the second round pick is not. So if you're talking about trading from 30 to, say, 35, that it's only a 5 spot difference, but that difference means you don't have to keep that player. The game also has a built-in mechanism to be able to send that player, overseas, and it temporarily removes them from the game and generates stats for them as if they were playing, overseas. You can stash those second round picks and bring them back. So the goal is not to make it impossible to trade a second round pick or multiple second round picks for a first round pick, but to make it within a smaller window. So obviously, even if we take a team that's supposed to be really good, like Los Angeles, and we offer them a bunch of second round picks, this is for the future one again. So even though one season from now they still should be a contender, they still shouldn't have that much to worry about, they're not willing to do that. So if we try the upcoming draft and they're still even giving them 3 second round picks for what will be a late first round pick, still not willing to go for that either. If I had a worse team, maybe the very worst team or the second worst team, they might go for something like that. But we're really making a focus on, kind of throwing in a bunch of picks, at least second round picks, as a team not valuing that a ton. Putting 1 second round pick in a deal to kind of close the gap is something that we're not changing. But I have changed the option of throwing multiple second round picks at a problem and saying, oh, okay, now you get a bunch of second round picks. Does that make things better? And it really doesn't. It really shouldn't change things from the AI's perspective and in terms of making things better. The last thing that I've been working on in terms of the trade AI has been for the draft. So we're going to talk a little bit about the draft here. 2 things have changed in terms of the draft. Now, one is people for a long time have said, there should be way more talent in the draft, which I've tried to show the numbers and the stats and say that the drafts really are set up to be the right amount of talent. It's just people have they think about Draymond Green or Manu Ginobili and say, oh, there should be second round. Yes, there should be players that you can unearth every once in a while later in the draft, and there is a hidden boom bust feature in the game which makes that possible. And yes, it's rare, but it's rare in real life too that you find a star player in the second round. So that's always been in there. But 2 things I've changed for the 2021 version are, number one, the players are going to start out a little bit closer to their potential. I think that part of the problem is that people don't really understand the rating system necessarily. They see a 2 or 3 star player in the draft and they think, well, that the draft is not very strong. There should be a lot of 5 and 4 star players. But if you look at the way the rosters are rated, I mean, we can look in this roster set here. You look at a player like Kuzma as a 3-star player. That's that sort of player. If you redid the draft and you picked him at the 10th or 11th pick in the draft, you'd think, okay, that's pretty good for that point in the draft. A 2-star player in the game. We talked about this in the live streams before when we were sending out seasons and stuff like that. 2-star player in the game is a player that will get minutes. That is, we just made that trade here with Houston, but a guy like House or Tucker, a guy who's capable of getting minutes. So if you are drafting a 2-star guy in the draft, it is a guy who is a potential rotation player. He's not a star, but he's a potential rotation player. So one thing we're doing is we're going to make the appearance in the draft have guys start just a little bit closer to their potential. I think is probably a little bit more realistic in terms of what we've seen in the past few drafts, where players are coming in and contributing right away at a very high level, like in Doncic or Trae Young or Zion, when obviously he's been hurt a lot, but or Morant, guys who come in and they're legitimately really good from the start. So just a slight tweak to those players in the draft, which I think will also give the appearance that the draft class has improved when it's really the same draft class. It's just presented a little bit differently, because I feel that the draft class has always had the proper balance. It's just that I think people haven't seen that through the star system. So that's going to change. And also in terms of trading during the draft, definitely taking a look at trading for the future picks. I think there was a loophole in the trade AI before that really wasn't valuing, the valuation changes during the draft. Once we get to the draft, each team evaluates the value of the picks based on who's in the draft and what pick they have. So that's something that I think is important, because it's no longer an unknown. It's a known value of the pick. What I had to do a better job on is that unknown in the future. So I really made some changes this week in the draft itself in terms of trading draft picks, where you can't. The picks in the future are going to be much more valuable, I think, than the picks in the current draft. At a certain point, obviously, if you have a top pick and you've got a stud player in the draft, that pick's going to be very valuable because it's going to evaluate that pick as being, the 5-star player, the Zion in the draft. But I think as you've gone later in the draft, it's been too easy to simply say, oh, there's nobody I like here. I'll just swap this for a future first-round pick. And, that pick could be anything. That pick could be a lottery pick easily if it's a middle-of-the-road team that falls apart. So I've made some efforts to take that away. So the draft pick valuation has been really, really tightened up in 2021. So it's much tougher and more fair for the AI in trading with you, and it does a much better job of evaluating what could happen in the future, as opposed to looking at the future through the way things are currently. This is a look at a new page, by the way, in the league media section, just called Draft Picks. It was always something that, as I was doing the live streaming, I was like, okay, which picks do my team have? Who has other picks? And I'd have to go back to the trade page all the time to find out and scroll down which picks I had. This page will show you all this stuff at a glance now. As you can see, I made that trade for Houston's first-round pick, so now I have Houston and OKC's pick. And if you get, we'll pull one up with the draft save, and you'll be able to see that as you get up to the draft, it will fill in that information about what exactly the picks are on that screen. So that'll be a help too. This one is at the draft. So now it'll tell you, this is the second pick, this is the 7th pick. And as you can see, there's been a lot of first round picks traded in this particular sim, so the AI has gotten more aggressive too in trading first round picks. Both it's sort of gotten smarter in its future valuation of the picks and more aggressive in the current pick that that it can trade. So it was really hesitant to trade first round picks among itself, I think, in the past, or even offer them to the human player. That's been improved as well. So the AI will offer first round picks and will trade first round picks more often with the other AI teams, as well as this sim was done before the future pick tightening up, but even here, it's done a pretty good job of hanging on to its future first round picks, and that's really the goal. I want it to really be much more protective of what could happen in the future, and make it much more difficult for you to kind of keep swapping out things that for things that you can have a better idea of what will happen in the future. And so we've had to make the AI smarter to catch up to all of our very smart, intelligent human players. And that's really the kind of player that we tailor our games to, somebody who's looking for that ultimate management experience. So as we talked about on our social media, that we're going to keep these streams to specific topics and just to 30 minutes to kind of give people a chance to pop in, and also to make them a little bit easier to rewatch in the future. So we're going to finish up with that tonight. I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you, Seasoned Vet, for your contributions in the chat. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the channel already. And again, if you have Amazon Prime and have that free Twitch Prime subscription, and you can offer it to us, certainly appreciate that. I appreciate everybody who subscribes and follows our channel. We will be back later this week with Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2021, and we'll be back next Tuesday to talk about a new topic here, the Pro Basketball 2021 Developer Dynasty. So thank you tonight, and we'll see you soon.